All right, hello everybody. Welcome back, Audio Propeller. This is Sam. I'm going to walk you through how to set up Logic with VCV Racks, which is a virtual modular DAW, DAW, as people like to say. I don't say that. That's what people say. So what we got going on here? Let's take a little listen real quick. I should probably name these two. I'm gonna call this VCV Synth. And this is just called my drums. That's it. There we go. All right. So we got a little string going through a module called Clouds, and then we've got a synth that has been programmed in Logic and is being played by VCV Racks. So what's going on here? We got the actual virtual instrument in Logic is being sent over to VCV Racks and being returned on Soundflower. You may have heard of Soundflower. It's a virtual audio interface on your computer, on your Macintosh. And I got VCV Synth right here, which is just a MIDI track, audio instrument track that is sending MIDI using this external instrument over to VCV Racks. And then we've got, this is just some drums, nothing interesting there. And the strings here is a plugin and got a compressor, and then it's using the I/O plugin. So if you've ever worked with external gear, this is how you can do it. You can pipe stuff in and out of Logic real easy, but we're going to be piping on Soundflower. And we're going to be sending the MIDI on IAC driver IAC bus 1. So that's the first thing we need to do. First thing, install Soundflower. You can figure out how to do that yourself. Use your web browser and your computer skills that you've picked up along the way. I assume you've gotten this far. So then next thing we're going to do is open up the audio MIDI setup. So this is a utility inside the Macintosh, and we're going to let's see. I'm going to delete this bad boy out of here, and I'm going to create a new. Just so you know, we're inside audio MIDI setup. Oh gosh, something's happening here. Get rid of that. Hopefully everything still works here. Let's see. Yeah, we're still working. Okay. So normally you're going to be playing just out of your audio interface. Mine's called the Quartet here, but I'm going to create one that combines the Quartet and the Soundflower interface. So what I'm going to do is hit this plus here, create an aggregate device. I'm going to aggregate the Quartet and the Soundflower 64. You could use the two. If you just want to pipe one bit of audio, like if you don't want to do more than one, if you just want to do a MIDI signal going to VCV Racks and then the audio coming back, you can get away with the 2-channel. But if you want to do anything more, if you want to send audio there and back, you're going to want to go with more, which is the 64. So you can see I hit Quartet first. That sets my clock source up as Quartet, so I want that to happen. I'd like these to be first for my sanity. And then I'm going to be able to look here, and the red is my Soundflower interface. So they've all been smashed together, and I've got a huge amount of inputs and outputs. And my input for the Soundflower 1, 1, and 2, if you want to think of that, is going to be 13, 14. Then the first output is going to be 9, 10. So it's good to write these things down and pair them up. So you want to write down 13 and 14, go with 9 and 10. 15 and 16, go with 11 and 12. 17 and 18, go with 13 and 14. Okay? So you can rename that to my awesome interface. And I'm actually going to be using this aggregate device here, Soundflower, and I put 13, 14 on here just to help me remember that the inputs start at 13 and 14. So that's that. Next, we look at the MIDI Studio. So we can bring that up. And I believe that you should have this IAC driver here by default. So you click that, hit the I, and then make sure you have an IAC bus. If you don't, press plus, create an IAC bus, and you are good to go. You can rename it to be something else, I believe, but I just leave it 1, and I don't really need the 2. I could get rid of that, but there you go. Apply that. We're done. So that's some of that tricky stuff out of the way. Next, after creating the aggregate device and the Midi IAC bus, I want to configure Logic. So I go to Logic, open up a new song, most likely. So I open up a new song, and then I go to my project settings, Midi, and synchronization actually is where I should go. And I'm going to, normally it will be like this. It'll be off, destination off. So this is where I configure IAC bus to receive the clock from Logic, right? And then we go down to MIDI sync preferences for Logic in its entirety. And I want to look at my inputs and uncheck the IAC driver bus 1 because I think what happens is when you press play, this sends it out, and then also it gets it back in, and then things crash. So really VCV Racks crashes when you have that set up. So that is a required setting there. So now we've got that done, and I think you can save this as your default, and you'll get the IAC driver 1 sending clock for future projects, unless something in your templates or something. I don't know how that works, but something to look into if you're worried about that being set for everything. You might need to set in your templates, or I'm not sure if that is now overriding any template settings that come in. So now that we've got that set up, Logic is pretty much good to go. But what we need to do is create a Logic instrument that we're going to have send MIDI over to VCV Racks and then get that audio back. So the way we do that, I've already got my VCV Synth set up, so that's the purpose that that's fulfilling. But in order to do that, we would say, give me a software instrument. The instrument I am going to use is utility external instrument. So this is really a cool thing. I've used this with one hardware synth before, but we are able to create a track that sends MIDI out. So we're going to pick IAC driver bus, and then we get audio back in from somewhere else. Ooh, very cool. So like I noted before, my inputs are going to be on 1314 for this first thing. So I'm going to send MIDI out, and then I'm going to get my first pair of Soundflower inputs back on 1314. Okay. So I'm going to mute that, so it's sounding out right now. Like I had this one turned down. The VCV synth is actually like sending audio, so the gate is not properly set up to turn it off. So anyway, we don't really need that track, just showing you how to set that one up. And then the other thing, well, we'll just go through that whole process here. So now that we have the track set up, that should be setting things properly to VCV Rack, but we got to go to VCV Rack and set this thing up. There we go. Okay, so we got VCV Racks up. I had the window kind of dragged off screen, and this is a kind of modified tutorial patch. So what I've got here is added on a couple clouds. So I've got clouds to process my synth that I'm about to set up, and then I've got clouds to process some audio that I'm going to send. So the thing I need to do is I need to have the MIDI CV module in my patch and a audio of some kind. I think 8 is the smallest, but what we're going to be doing is sending the volts per octave. So this is going to be your pitch coming from Logic, and then we're going to have a gate coming from Logic 2 that's going to trigger the note, and also we have a clock coming from Logic, and so this is the clock, which I think is 16th notes per measure, and then we can change that clock divider to be quarter notes or whole notes or whatever we want it to be to modulate a source. And of course there's modules you can put in. If you're watching this, you probably know about Rack, so I won't go into it as much, but suffice it to say, you need to hook up your MIDI, and you do that by going to Core MIDI, and then you go to IAC driver bus 1. You've probably already done this if you've dealt with Racks, but the thing is you need to pick this IAC driver bus. So once we have that configured and we have Logic running and sending over MIDI data, you'll see these things start to pulse. So The other piece of the puzzle is we go to Core Audio, and for this setting here, you might think, oh, I'm going to go grab my aggregate device. I have so many things here now because I've set those up. But what I actually do is go to this MA++ Ingalls for Cycling 74. Just rolls off the tongue. 64 channel, 1 through 8 in and 1 through 8 out. So what that means is that my outputs, which in my aggregate device are, let me see, in my notes, I have, scroll down here, 13, 14, and 9, 10. So these to my device are actually, I believe, my 9, 10s coming out. So what I have here is routing some stuff through the texture synthesizer, so mutable instruments, clouds, and that's going back to 1, 2, which is actually a 9, 10. So that's the confusing part about this, is knowing what outputs to use to route. So in the notes, which I'll post with this, I'll try and recommend how to think about that. So this should be 9 and 10, which is actually my 1 and 2. So that should be coming back. And so what's going to happen is when we play inside Logic, it's going to send out the MIDI notes and the clock, and things will modulate. So let's, and we're actually just using this voice right now. So you can see the gate firing here. You can see the clock. Actually, what am I triggering off of? Well, I'm going off full spur octave, so I probably should be pulling the gate in here, but I just did that off the note firing, and that's running some other stuff. I really have kind of no idea what I'm doing inside here, so I'm a newbie to racks, so you know, it's a miracle that I get all this stuff to work, but you know, I managed to get it to work. I just hooked some stuff up and sounded kind of cool. So anyway, that's coming back out. So there you go. There's that. So next, we're going to look at how to set up the your audio to route. Stop that from playing. Okay. So the other thing I've got here, like I said, is a plugin from Spitfire, the free Labs instrument they have here. So it's just playing a couple chords, and then what I've got on it. So this is a audio instrument, and this could be an audio track. And what you do is you insert this I/O plugin. So that's utility, I/O, stereo. Let's take a look at how that's configured. Very much the same as the external instrument, except for it only works with audio. So what I'm doing here, and this is where things get a little tricky. And let me just, I'm going to bring this text in here into my notes so we can see this. Okay, so here's my outputs, my inputs and my outputs in Soundflower, in the aggregate device. Sorry. So 1 through 12 are my hardware for the inputs. 1 through 8 are my outputs for the hardware, and then this is where Soundflower takes over. So this is how you see things in Logic, since it is using the aggregate device. So I've already used the 1314 for my previous example, and the way it seems like things work is when you route something into Soundflower, it also ends up coming out the output. So if you think you're going to reuse one of these pairs, you'll end up getting crosstalk between channels, or you'll end up, if I tried to use just 15, 16, 11, 12 for when I'm routing this audio, like if I use 15, 16 in Logic and then I picked the equivalent of 11, 12, which is 3, 4 in VCV Racks, it would end up just returning the plain signal that I sent. So what I need to do is send audio out from Logic on 15, 16. Sorry, 11, 12. See, I've got 11, 12 picked here. And then 17, 18, I'm going to send from VCV Racks and then get that back here. It's very confusing, but once you get it set up, it's very, very cool and very good. And all the stuff you can do in VCV Racks is awesome. So that's why I go through this pain. That's why I made this video, because it took me a while to figure it out. So anyway, we'll go look at how that is set up. So I send out on one of these pairs, on a new fresh pair, so the 1112 output, and then I'm going to get back in on a new fresh input. So let's see how that goes in VCV Racks. And all this happens in the audio bit. So I'll just kind of, for reference, we'll keep this up here so we can see those notes. All right, so I've got, let's see, audio from my device coming out 3-4. So let's see if we can make sense of this. Like I said, I was sending to 1112. So this should be our first two are 910 and then 1112. So that makes sense, at least to me. That's coming out, going into clouds, and then doing whatever we do in clouds. And then that's coming back out and going to the 5-6. So I would think, when I first tried this, that I would plug it into these 3-4 because they kind of, they're on the same. But we don't want to do that. We want to get a fresh, because this audio is also ending up coming out of here or going back into there. So we want to pipe the audio out of clouds back into a fresh pair. So that's 5-6, aka I think 17-18. Let's just double check that. Like we said, yep, 17-18 in Logic. So once we have that going, we'll solo the strings here. So there's the unaffected. Turn up the that thing. So got the freeze being modulated here. Pull that out. Just grab it. All that stuff. Oh my god. So very cool. So that's basically it. Pull that down. The other things to talk about real quick, you could call it a day there, but you've got these other MIDI inputs, of course, mod wheel, velocity, aftertouch. Interesting things though are clock. Like I said before, you can divide your clock by different divisions here. Kind of just an easy way to do that. Of course, there's other clock divider modules you can use. And then you've also, if you've got a sequencer running, you can use these start, stop, and continue commands. I'm not super familiar with them. I have noticed that when looping inside Logic, sometimes things won't line up, but often it seems to kind of work out once it gets going. But you send the start and stop to your sequencer objects inside here, or modules, to make them stop playing when Logic stops, so that you don't just have things carrying on in VCV Racks while Logic is stopped and slowly driving yourself mad. So I think that's it. That's everything I wanted to show. Just obviously you could also put this I/O on a bus, something like something like this, and send it over. Use pipe multiple things over to it. The other thing I did not mention is, let me show this real quickly. You can set the latency detection on your I/O plugin. I don't know why the heck that just went to 1.4 seconds. This is possibly because I have the mix all the way up on this, the blend. So I need to let some of that ping signal. So what it does is it makes a little, let's see, let you hear it. It makes a little click. So it fires a click, and it knows when it sent the click in Logic, routes it through the external stuff, whatever that is, then measures when it hears it back in. So it will adjust. And that seems more realistic, that it's a positive number. But normally, I'm not sure why it's going so high here. Normally it ends up around 90 some samples for me. But it's kind of whack and going kind of, oh, it's probably, let me just make sure the blend is totally down so it's getting a clean signal. Okay, well, we'll mark this up to doing the screencast, but normally it comes through at about 90, and I would expect it be around there. So yeah, actually I have no idea what it should be, but that's what it has been coming out as. So anyway, that helps the audio coming back in from the external processing. If there's some kind of delay, Logic will realign it so that everything is lined up and synced up and tight as it is meant to be. So hope this helped, and subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up. We'll talk to you later.